something like that. The dude who invented the Hertz signal that Morse code travels on. In Sweden, July 4th is the holiday of Alexander's Durga. Alexander Day, July 5th. I'm gonna find it. I'll prove it.
Yeah, prove it, man. Prove it. I want to know who's that guy.
Recent Tartaria.
Alex, come on. Sweden.
Yo, wait a minute. You have a tank top, bro? What? How hot is it in Minnesota?
Bruh, it's like 53. It's about 12 degrees centigrade right now in the evening. Oh wait, that's Stockholm, Sweden. Let's find out what temperature in Wisconsin. I'm actually in Wisconsin, just across the border.
Yo, what did I tell you? Didn't I tell you this guy's always moving around?
It's 80 degrees right now. Because this is a different, less taxes, right? Wisconsin has less taxes, and it's like Minnesota is pretty cool, but it's got a lot of rules and regulations. I'm about 15 feet from a strip club as we speak. Yeah, that's true. There's racist cops, but the racist cops work with the racist gangs like the Crips and the Bloods.
That's true.
I'm pretty sure the Crips, what's his name? George Floyd. Did you see my video on George Floyd?
Nah, I didn't.
Well, okay, so it's not really on George Floyd, but he did the music and the porn in it. And
I saw the George Floyd porn. That was nice.
Yeah, it was a lot to watch. I wouldn't say it was the best work he's ever done, but his rap music. If you speed his rap music up to South Park speed, like I did in my video, it's really impressive. I think that George Floyd's rap is like "Welcome to the Streets," and you can really get this. It was the same week I was listening to George Floyd's death rap album. It was the same week I was watching the funeral that Joe Biden went to in the Sharia COVID mask, and so he's wearing Top Gun aviators, and he's like, "Welcome to the streets." That's I'll never forget thinking that way. But it is too hot. I'll agree. Okay, so wait, I was supposed to look something up a second ago, and I was like, "I'll
July
prove it."
5th. July 5th. Whose birthday?
July
is that?
5th, Sweden. Okay.
Speaking of birthdays, my birthday's coming up, Andreas. What did you get me, man?
Really?
Yeah, July 9th.
When is your birthday again?
July
9th. That's days from now, bro.
Yeah,
brutal,
I know, right?
brutal.
But I'm turning some weird age number. Weird as fuck. 29. It's the most random
Oh,
age.
no. Oh, I know exactly what to get you for your birthday. A rude awakening. That's very 29. Buddy from Russia. Is your name? Yeah. I forget.
All right, wait. I'm gonna give you a hint. Oh, you just heard it, didn't you?
Yeah. I didn't because you.
Oh, you didn't hear
it.
All right. Famous writer, famous Russian writer.
Is it Fedor?
Oh, bam! Well, on the first guess.
All right.
Why didn't you guess Alexei, man?
I did hear part of it, so I guess that must have been. I didn't realize I heard it until after I just extracted you from the equation.
Yo, Andreas, I have to ask you this question, bro. What planet do you live on? Because it feels like you're not in with us, That's
a really good question. All I know is that the planet I come from has 36-hour days. I can tell from my sleep cycle, but it confuses people because you meet people half the month that are nocturnal, and they're like, "Oh, you're cool because you hang out at night and you drink coffee." I'm like, "No, I don't. I just." And then the next group, they're like, "Oh, you're a real go-getter. You get up at 5 o'clock in the morning." And you're like, "No, I don't." And then eventually they just realize, "Oh my God, Tyler Durden supposedly only sleeps 1 hour a night." I'm so I don't know. I don't know if I'm from a planet. I might just be from some planet geometry of a flat reality that just expands in every direction, or I could be in some sort of Mobius donut strip thing. But definitely Anunnaki blood, tiger blood, whatever Charlie's saying. I'm bi-winning, try-winning. I'm polyrhythm. I'm whatever. We're gonna go there.
Yo, goddamn, some geometry stuff, man. All right.
We try our best. What is the name of that holiday?
Yeah, quick question. How is Brittney? Is she still with you?
Yeah, she's doing well. So that's the thing. The kids outside with their fireworks right now that are shooting them off. And Brittney's sister's kids are here. Her sister's family is here. And it's been pretty good. I mean, there's lakes everywhere, so it's weird as you look at Wisconsin and Minnesota, and they just have thousands of lakes just spread out. It looks like some like forbidden part of Russia you're not allowed to see, but it's like, it looks amazing, and there's just swampland, and then they're like, yeah, in the wintertime we have trails that go across. I'm like, oh yeah, of course, because it isn't like this all year round. It gets to be hot as heck. Like right now it's like 30 degrees centigrade almost, it's like 27 or something. It will go, back down to freezing, and then you can take these routes around from one lake to another. So in the wintertime, they're a lot closer together in certain ways because they don't have to go around all these freaking, potholes. Yeah, and so they have a really like close, legit like winter connection. But in the summertime, they go onto the lakes in their pontoons, and the lakes become this whole community, which is like really interesting because they have a lot of freedom on the lakes. And it freaks me out how big the fish get, because they drop fish, I thought, out of the sky, but now they actually have pipes that like pipe fish, baby fish, into the lakes so that they can keep them right. And then they do it once a year from trucks. Trucks will come and put the pipes into the water and empty them like petroleum. And then the fish grow, and if nobody catches the fish because they're liberal, they'll become like 50 pounds or 100 pounds or 300 pounds. Eventually you have a 20-foot northern or something like that. And it's just too big, you know what I mean? Like there's no one to deal with it.
So they have a fish. They have too many fish, too many and too big fish over there. Oh, your sound just cut out.
Oh, brutal. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, they have big fish that grow to be like too big, and then no one can eat them, and so then they'll end up alone. It's like, so you actually have. That's a big thing where I'm from, actually, in the coast. Like squid, like if nobody eats the squid will grow from like about an inch or like 2.5 centimeters to about 2 meters, right? Like 6.5 feet, just about. And so they're so big that hold on 1 second.
You want me to?
But that's right. It's just like your personality, man, is just fucking insane. So I have a question. The first one would be like, what makes you tick? That's the question.
Why makes you tick?
Yeah. So energetic.
Well, there's definitely Slavic blood involved or something. Like when you're born, there's a way about you. And I've got like definitely enough Neanderthal, Klingon skull, like whatever alien race that is. Like I dent people's walls, and I apologize. Like when I was young. So at this point, I think and I don't drink coffee because it hurts my gut. I don't really like caffeine because it makes me sleepy. I don't do cocaine because that's boring. So I don't really, it's like, it's not like I can say like, you can buy this and you can be like this or something. But, I'm crazy, like for sure. I mean, like there's a certain level of mania that's like, and I spend a lot of time like doing things, and maybe it's because I don't drink coffee or something that I have like sustained energy. I don't have like, these amphetamine like rhythms of sleep deprivation and then I'm better again. But also, yeah, like, I spent a lot of time around the world in different places. And so I never normalized to any one thing. And you go to one place and they're like, well, you're crazy. You act like that. Like, and I'm like, yeah, well, where people where I'm from call that, or where I've been call that craziness. They call that survival, because they have to do it. Like if you live in a hot place or a cold place or in the water, in the desert, like you're going to call everybody else crazy. Especially somebody who just like visits those places. Why would you visit this place? It's like, so eventually you just stop trying to be normalized. And that's I would say that fundamentally, that's the biggest one. Like people are like, okay, well, this is what normal people do. And I'm like, okay, am I going to get put in a gulag? Then get the hell away from me. I'm not going to do it. Like I'm going to wear whatever I want.
Yeah, quickly, can you tell us some places? Where are some places you have been or lived?
Okay, let's see. I lived in Paraguay, Argentina, Chile, like all over South America and all over Europe, like Eastern Europe particularly, like Croatia is where my family's from. I lived in France for a while. I walked across Spain. I did the Camino de Compostela from across France and Spain, and hitchhiked through Hungary, and I've been to Germany and Austria and Denmark. I took trains across Denmark into Norway, and man, by the way, in Sweden they don't let you drink alcohol. That's like a messed up rule. You have to like
what?
You have to buy like 3% if it's cold. So like normal beer, you can't. Yeah, You know why? Because it's an Indian reservation for Scandinavians. It's just like a terrible idea. They just are like, oh, we don't trust these people, so we're gonna make them buy like warm beer, which is really shameful. Because like, you think they're not gonna drink it? Then you just have a bunch of idiots drinking warm beer with mullets. By the way, like, there's not like, you think Sweden's sophisticated? They have mullets too. Like, the whole idea, I don't know. But Denmark, pretty nice, pretty cold-hearted, pretty great place. I walked around Denmark with this speaker on my fanny pack, and they would just blast music at people, as I do. And then in Denmark, there's just brick buildings, and there's no trees, and it's just all, like, echo. And it's just like, the name of the game is the burr, 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 burr. And everyone's just like, what? Who's this clown? Why did this clown not get embarrassed yet? Like, Denmark's weird. Like, you get out of Denmark, you get into a train, and there's, like, everyone just goes to this machine and checks the thing, and you pay for it. There's no one to check you, like, because it's an honor system. And, like, basically everyone's there to check you because they look at you and they're like, see that guy? He didn't pay.
Yeah.
Glad I paid. Glad I'm not that weirdo. And you're like, what is wrong with you? Like,
yeah, I had the same experience in Finland. You know, when I just stopped in Finland for 8 hours when I was on my way to Russia to visit Fedor, and I got on the train and I was like, oh, do you have to pay? And one of those like guards, one of the like train guards, actually came and he was like checking people's tickets, and I was like, oh shit. And he was like, oh, you have to pay, man. And I was like, oh, I didn't know. I'm a foreigner. Don't you see?
Well, that's also you're lucky because you have an American accent.
That's what tipped him off.
I've been in 3 trains where I've been bothered about that ever, you know, in my whole life, and every single time there was a local person with a ticket who was black. Every single time they get like, there's no security. People are just smoking weed and having sex, and they're making Hungarian pornos. All of a sudden, like 4 people that work at the local kebab place show up, and you're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna check everyone. Let's check the guy with the. And like, I'm like, I have my ticket. They're like, yeah, screw that guy. I'm like, look at me. Like, I feel like am I not pretty enough? Don't I look like I would cheat the system? Like, what? And then there's a black dude in a suit, and they're just like, you show us your ticket, and he's like, here it is. And they're like, yeah, that's right. Like, I don't know what's going on. I guess Black Lives Matter, except in France. Did you see this recently? Like, the same year that they have a kneeling cop murder a guy in the United States, and we have a riot over it. In France, they have 6 to 9 African refugees and French natives who've been living there for 3 or 4 generations, murdered by the same system. And nobody's talking about it in France. That's a problem. They're just saying the United States is just like, I mean, and I think at the end of the day, it's more about the cops in general. But it's just like, yeah, France doesn't seem to care. Like, but what I love is that now you have to wear a mask in France, because last year it was like, you can't wear burqa.
Yeah.
You're dressed like a Muslim, you're in trouble. It's like, you know what? Take that, France. Why don't you all wear one for a week, and then you see how you feel.
Yeah,
love you, France.
But I have a question, right? Because I thought that like racism is like only an American problem, the only one, you know, local problem.
Well, racism was invented by the word racism was a Trotsky term. Like racism, Trotsky said that the Slavs who were too Slavophile, that believed in this sort of pan-Slavism, were a danger, and that they didn't understand that nationalism was the enemy of international socialism, and that we want to work towards humanitarianism at all levels. So these people that are stuck in the mud about their nationalism, they're sort of, I think he called it racism. No, that's again, he went to Mexico after the Soviets kicked him out. But that's the thing, and you have to look also, was Engels and Marx, and especially Trotsky, was Trotsky racist? Yes. Like, Trotsky would say that Stalin wasn't decent to run the country because he was part Asian. So, I mean, like, of all the things wrong with Stalin was beaten in the back by his father for, like, as a dog. Like, they used to beat Stalin, and he had webbed toes, and he had, you know, syphilis. There's a lot of things to hate about Stalin other than his race. So Trotsky, like, of all things, to pick that, like, it shows that racism was a big problem in the Soviet Union because it was such a big thing. So the Americanism of the racism is a false precept, is a false presupposition. Racism didn't exist the same way 100 30 years ago. You look at America at 18. Hey, look, more fireworks. Pretty rad. Okay, 100. There they go. There they go. God bless America. Cool. So 130 years ago, Massachusetts controlled Delaware. Well, they're governors, but they said as far west as you can go, you can control territories. So if you can control Minnesota, as long as the French aren't there, and the French were there, and there were Scandinavians there, so they ended up getting into fights with people later on because of not race, because the Indians and the French were already mating, and the Chinese had already come and they'd already created people, and the Moors had already been bringing people over, and the Indians owned slaves, and the slave laws were that you couldn't enslave the children, and you had to take care of somebody that was a slave when they were old. So they had all these kinds of like take care of people rules, and so then they've really changed the language of it. Like, you have to understand, the Americas in the 1,000 years ago was a confederacy of Indians, and the Indian Confederation, the Arawak Confederation, the Five Nations Confederation, that became the ideal for the American Confederacy. And when you go to like Louisiana, so you had the United States was like 12 states. Then you have this big chunk, which is New France, Nouvelle France. And then you have the West, and the West Coast was Spain, right? Spain got French territory because France could never control it. And there was Vikings and there was Indians living in there. And eventually America kind of consumed these other nations. So racism isn't really racism, it's nationalism. And it's trying to war against, it's like, well, we're really all the same because we're this way, and you're all different because of this other thing. Racism at that time, Louisiana had black governors, right? We had blacks that signed the Declaration of Independence that have, like, their faces have been whitened. Thomas Jefferson, Hamilton at least. I think everyone's seen the Hamilton musical. If you haven't, it's on Netflix. Black people were very equal at a certain point. And then we ended up in this position where slavery happened, probably because there were a number of really powerful black families in the United States in the 1600s. And it checks out if you look at Brazil, you look at Argentina, you look at all these places, black families were powerful because you'd have slaves that married into the one guy who owned this plantation in the middle of nowhere. He married one of his slaves, and he had kids, and he cared about his kid. It's a natural progression. So President Fernandez or Jose Fernandez, I forget, the president of Paraguay in the 1700s, Paraguay president Jose. Original. I have to look it up. It'll take forever. But right. Yeah, so Paraguay, they had a black president, and he made everyone marry each other in the 1800s. It was like you had to be mixed race by law. Like if you married someone, they had to be a native, they had to be a Spaniard, they had to be African, because they were like, we got to get rid of racism. So racism is a really kind of new thing. And like at the end of the day, you can prove this. Like, what is sexism modeled on? What is racism modeled on? So it's this idea that there is a social class that's higher than the other. So it's classism. So right. Classism always will outdate and will always permeate and will always supersede racism. Because at the end of the day, like, I would rather hang out with a good person who's a race I hate, quote unquote, than a bad person of the same race. Like if you have a rich black person, then the KKK is probably going to want to hang out with them more than a really like a heroin addicted, child molesting white person. So like morals count. Like at the end of the day, like this is a far-sighted vision spectrum for even the worst of the Americans. Even like the KKK are pretty bad. There's some pretty bad, versions of BLM too. Like there are racist everything. But like, I mean, what's weird is I just saw the KKK want to be racially inclusive. Did you see that?
No. When did that happen?
There's a dude, let me send you that one I can find. Racially inclusive KKK. And this has happened a while ago, actually. I think it was 2014 that they started saying it. But now they're like, dude, we're right here. We're a race-based organization that want to protect Black Lives Matter because we want white lives and Black Lives Matter together. And everyone's like, what's going on? But they had the NAACP at the KKK meeting in Montana. And the NAACP were like, all right, these guys are legit. And you're like, no, they're not. They're the KKK. What the heck are you talking about? But they've set up this idea that like we want to encourage our chapter to be more racially inclusive, and we want the broader KKK to not be considered a singular entity, but a number of small organizations that surround the concept of breaking free from the New World Order, and that respect the differences, and that the rainbow should be the KKK's rainbow too. And you're just, I mean, like, dude, I mean, did you see the picture of the black guy with the Confederate flag fighting the white guy with the Black Lives Matter flag? Because it's always like the matrix is broken. Like there's no in America, especially America is just this loud fever dream scream. It's just like, oh, like all the time. So I wouldn't say racism is our real problem, but you know, people are hateful.
Yeah,
Right,
but the
that's
point,
not-
what I was making, now it's my turn, I guess, to reply. Thanks, Andreas, for this goddamn huge
I
response.
feel like Robin Williams. I'm sorry.
But like because of this American superpower, it just brought this concept. Because like, let's say I've been hanging out with these guys like in the international community, and they've been talking like, racism, like all countries are racist. You know, there is no racism, and they didn't want to admit that there's like certain degrees, right? And that's what got me pissed off. You know, like Russia is racist, just like British, you know, and some other countries.
Russia's incredibly nationalistic. Russia's a pan-Slavic state that believes they're supreme and they speak the Slavic language perfectly. But like China says no black people in McDonald's. That's a little more racist.
Yeah, that's right. And we didn't colonize anybody. You know, we didn't colonize Zimbabwe.
So the Russians have been a lot of places, though. I mean, like, wouldn't you say Croatia and the West? You know, I would say that the West was pretty Russified, and familial. They didn't have colonies the same way. But even in Hawaii, there's like Russian, bases and things in the 1800s. But yeah, Russia. What's the reason? Just because you guys had a lot of land? You think you didn't have?
Yeah, I mean, like, we just expand our territory to the east. That's the reason, you know. We didn't have the access to the sea. So we just like, all right, whatever, we're going to go to Siberia.
Yeah. My thought is that Tartaria included Russia and that it expanded to California. And, yes, as I said, I am crazy in a sense. Because
I mean, like, Tartaria is a pretty, sacred place, man. It's like, you know, it's in our heart.
There's the Tartar lands, like in Kazakhstan and in Georgia, modern day Khazaria today. The idea is it expanded even to California, and that it was in Spain, you know, and that the Muslim caliphate, really, when you start looking into like the different authors, like man, my brain tonight, I'm on some of these Russian authors. I won't say it. Black Russian author. Pushkin. Pushkin, man. Pushkin was black, bro. I mean, like, you start looking into it, and they're like, okay, it's rare. Like, no, it's not really that rare. You got a lot of black Russians. It's not just a bar drink. And the whole idea of there being, there really was a culture that extended into the Moors, connected the same way that the Germans, for a long time, had a black royal family. I mean, it's because they mixed when they met, and they were people who travel are usually not xenophobic. You wouldn't do it, right? So, like, if I go out into the world, I'm more likely to be open to the people I see because I'm interested in going out in the world. It's like a placebo effect. So, Russia itself has got that same quality. You have Papua New Guinea anthropologist Russian named Nicholas Mikluha Maklay.
Yeah, Mikluha Maklay, yeah.
Yeah, what a weird name for a Russian, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
But not gonna question it. But he's a Ukrainian father, and so he went to Papua New Guinea. And so when you start looking at where the Russians were and what they were doing, like, it made a lot of sense to integrate into colonies that were being created by other companies. So if you're the Virginia company, you have the Dutch company, you've got these, it's like, go with them. Like, why would you bother starting your own colony? You know, starting a Russian colony, they did that in Antarctica, basically, and that worked.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I got it. No, I understand what you're saying, man. But also, I have a specific question, right? Because as we said, like, Tartaria had all of those mixtures of people from Moscow, I guess, Moscovia or even before that. all the way to California, and they had all this diversity of people living there, right? And what kind of problems did they have back then? Did they have like racism? Did they have like the problems that we're facing right now, or they've managed to solve them all?
So I think that at the time you had different problems, right? I think they had problems, natural and environmental problems. I think that a big reason that we have classism is because of scarcity economy, which occurred after a certain fact. There wasn't originally scarcity, there was abundance. Clearly, we see this in Native Americans, we see this in Asia, we see this in Africa. And what happens is a certain point when there's an overaccumulation of wealth in the hands of a few, or there's an abundance of persons, then there's less wealth to go around. So scarcity causes class, where they're like, well, this person's more prioritized than another person. And so once classism happens, you're like, well, these people are new. So their whole people are, are lesser class. So racism comes, I don't think that Tartaria had that. I think originally what Tartaria had was, whoa, these people have gunpowder. Like, whoa, these people have salt water that's been purified into water, and we live in the desert, or vice versa. Like, we have trade. This person has a boat with with a whole bunch of space on his boat. I have a bunch of stuff. And so you have a caste system that's developing not over essentiality of, or not over priority, but over essentiality. Like each one of them needs each other for the system to exist. So there's a Scythian that's spending all their time working in the fields, and there's the Aryan, Tartarian that's bringing the boat back and forth. And then they're meeting with two different groups of people that are growing on one continent or another continent, and they have an endless summer. And then the people that have winters, they experience it different. So you have the same thing you have in America. It's like, or probably in Russia, it's like, oh, those people are from Moscow. The Moscovians, they're all the same. They're and then you have everyone else. They're like, oh, those people don't get what it's like to be in the country. Like if you're out in like Odessa or something weird, like you're in Kiev, it's kind of got this nice city vibe. But what if you go to the Crimean coast and it's like Ukraine? Like, you don't know what it's like in the Ukraine. Like, so everyone's thinking it's like so different. Kazakhstan's so different than Northeast, like in Siberia. Novosibirsk, is different than Kazakhstan. So it's nothing to do with race at that point. Not really. Absolutely. Like, but with the United States, what you have is a continual change from or assimilation of what happened in Tartary. Because at one point in Tartary, the problems they had were probably a volcano went off. And so we have these constant reminders of natural disaster and war. And war is like, well, what if someone takes our stuff? So we need to protect our stuff, and we can protect it from other people. I don't think Tartarians did that. I don't think society was built by the Tartarians for war. It was for trade. So trade allowed them to accumulate more society, and so they valued that more. And so their problems were probably that a volcano destroyed their major centers. And there's probably several volcanoes that went off. It's actually looking like some of the research we have shows that they were using those volcanoes for power, for mineral extraction, and that they might have even caused some of these explosions that were.
It's interesting. I just have this idea in my mind, just popped up. So it feels like the collapse of that country, like the territory, became with those natural disasters, right? And not rather like classes and collusion, other stuff like racism or like war. It was just happened naturally, let's say. So I have a question. Can we draw this parallel that what's coming, the climate change that would destroy like a big portion of the world, and that would like bring people together, or like, I don't know how to put it, but I guess you know what I'm...
And totally. No, that's the idea, is that you have a super volcano in Russia, you have a super volcano under Yellowstone, you have super volcanoes everywhere. Volcanoes go off if you check your day, 100 times a day, 30 to 100 times a day. 80-90% of the volcanoes are underwater, 70 or 80% of the earth is underwater. So when you start looking at it, volcanoes go off all the time, they build and they level. Society will eventually be destroyed by a volcano, not by an asteroid. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So volcanoes are an inevitability, but at the same time, we learn how to deal with it. So, I'm not particularly worried, because when it happens, it's gonna like be so big, like a super volcano that has a super flume, that has a super critical eruption. is very, these are all specific terms. Like a super eruption is not the same as supercritical eruption. A larger eruption that actually like takes out the entire North American continent would cause the entire planet to be covered in sulfuric gas that would gas everyone and they would die in a few weeks. So it's like, don't worry about volcanoes, because if it happens, and you are just done. But at the same time, small volcanoes happen. When I was in Argentina and Chile, I'd see 13, 14 volcanoes go off, within like a couple months. And I was like constantly out running them or driving, trying to get away from a volcano. It was like, this is ridiculous. So imagine that on a bigger scale. Like if people understood that volcanoes actually affect lives like that, then they'd probably realize. But we've done a lot. Society's done a lot to actually prevent this, to divert energy from volcanoes. People don't realize how much, But yeah, I think volcanoes will probably be the issue more than it'll be like COVID. I think that, at the end of the day, though, classism comes from scarcity. And there's certain kinds of scarcity. There's even scarcity just like, okay, we have plenty of corn in the United States, but it's all genetically modified and might screw you up. And it's, it's in one place. If we have diverse kinds of people that eat diverse kinds of food that are different in different places, then if one of them dies off, the other ones live. It's simple, cold-hearted science. And so there's a reason why they're closing the borders on you, and then they're trying to make people speak on their own internets and their own echo chambers, because legitimately it's safer. Like if you have everyone that's the same and there's one super killer, then there's no.
That's right. I think, like, personally.
Wait, wouldn't you say though that like the intermixing of people causes some genetic diversity and also just like cultural diversity, which allows people to think and move differently? How would you respond to that?
Well, okay. So, all right. First off, I want to say yes, but before I do, I have to devil's advocate myself and say not every person I've ever seen who's mixed race is a super genius athlete who, you know what I mean? So let's point that out. It doesn't necessarily mean this works, but where did the Nazis go after they were done with their eugenics programs? Brazil. What was Brazil like? What is Brazil like now? It's the ultimate melting pot. It's like every weird thing from everywhere in the world together has been mixed together. You have black, white, and then, of course, everything in between. Japanese have 2 million people. You have Chinese people. You have, different kinds of people from all the Indians and the hundreds of different kinds of people. So the genetics in Brazil are incredible, incredibly diverse. Are they good at sports? Yes. Are Brazilians smart? Often. So is there any reason to say that mixing would make you retarded and like a mule is like a horse and a donkey? Like, no. So like I would say that the real truth of it is that you look at corn, because you take corn and the way they breed corn is they take bags and put it over the stalks of each corn, and then it inbreeds. It pollinates itself, and then they do that for 7 generations. And after 7 generations, you have this tiny, weak, inbred, like white corn, and you have one from one plant, and you have another that's been 7 years grown its own way in another place. And then they mix those inbred corns together like a royal family, and you get the biggest corn you've ever seen, because it's all of the genetic fixes to all the problems. So I think that there's a multi-level plan in social engineering to inbreed genes in certain places and then to mix them in other places. And we're clearly mixing more in cities, and now in the country it's been like there's certain places where people are developing certain ways and they're staying the same way. So I mean, at the end of the day, you need it all. Trying to have one solution to the whole thing is ridiculous. Like, what are you going to tell everyone they have to all breed the same way? But like, I think.
What about Paraguay, man? What about Paraguay? How did that turn out?
Paraguay is one of the best places because it has 98% happiness, right? So you've got like satisfaction in Denmark, and they're like, we're number 1 in satisfaction. I saw like 3 people jump out of windows. Like my friend's apartment. I'm like, this is a nice apartment. He's like, yeah, this woman was living here and she jumped out of the window because she was unhappy.
I feel like there's some kind of conspiracy with the whole Scandinavia is the most happiest place on the planet.
That's what I mean. They're not the most happy. They're the most content. Because this lady had a nice apartment and she wasn't cold and she wasn't hungry and she wasn't tired, and she jumped out of the window because she wasn't content. You know, like she wasn't happy. She jumped out and she broke her back the second fall. The first time she landed in a clothing wire and it saved her life like a miracle. The second time she shouldn't have done it because she broke her back and she is in a wheelchair and she couldn't go up the stairs anymore. So then my friend got the apartment, and so it's like, so that's what Denmark's like. But you go to like Paraguay, there's like 0 tax. It's like 2% tax if you're an honest person. So 0 tax in Paraguay. Wow. And like for the most part, everyone is, living above the law and under the law. They have like, it's like a feudal system. People are on motorcycles. There's like a warehouse full of Mercedes you can buy in a dirt road in the middle of nowhere. Like it is like Iraq, but with more rainforest, and it's like basically the coolest place on the planet. If it's not a flat earth, but they've got the North Koreans would get their whiskey from there because there's an embargo. Cuba would get their, deals from the CIA, the mafia, the Sharia ISIS, all of it is in Paraguay. People don't get Taiwan, like the Chinese mafia, like dude, the Yakuza, and like, God bless them. Like they run South America for the most, like Fujimorismo in Peru, like the Japanese, like hardcore in Paraguay. So it's an interesting place. And I was just thinking the other day about it because it was like, oh, they locked the EU out. I'm like, well, where would I go? I'm like, well, a cool country, because like there's plenty of places you can go that like you just bribe them still. Hopefully that still works, right? Because anywhere that was the case before, it's still cool, basically. And like it's kind of what it's like to be from California, because like weed used to be illegal, but it was cool in California. We need that mentality back. It's like, don't worry, we don't force the laws here. Have a nice day. Like that's where you want to be, like wherever it is.
Damn, interesting. What was the most memorable moment in Paraguay? Like crazy event, or just like you remember till now? Like what was that?
That's a vague question. I guess, okay, one of the things that really sticks out to me, and this isn't like the most fascinating thing, but I remember there's this East German guy who used to make musicals, and he came back from work one day from East Germany. When he was living in East Germany, he had a holiday when he was like 19. And when he got on Monday back, they're like, you weren't here. You're the reason why the greatest composer of the Deutsche Democratic Republic died. Because all these kids were here and they didn't have their rows correctly and they were singing in the wrong keys and it was disorderly. And it gave him a heart attack and he died because you were on vacation. It's your fault. You live with this, comrade. And at that point, he was like, that's it. I can't take it. So that was like 1988, 1989. So he escaped to Paraguay from, I guess he went from West Germany. I don't know. Once he got to Paraguay, married some Indian lady, got her knocked up, had some kids. And then the wall came down. He found out a year after it come down. And he's like, you come home? He's like, what? Why? So he just stayed in Paraguay and he's still there. So I meet this dude and he's like, I'm like, wow, you got this really nice place here. He's like, yes, it's hell. It's hell, but I've made it heaven. A lot of people say you have heaven here, but it's not heaven. It was hell. And I turned it into heaven with my hands. And he was just like this nuts dude. And at one point, this howler monkey starts howling. It's like, ah! And then he just goes like, das Deutschland, Deutschland Republika Demokratie. And he starts singing the East German national anthem. And the howler monkey and him are banging on their chests. And they're singing, and he's heard it before, clearly. So the monkey is singing it back to him. And I'm just like, okay, dude, I'm home. This is Paraguay. Like, oh, yeah. And I bought 150 hand-rolled cigars by, like, Pocahontas for, like, $1.50. It was, like, Indian-rolled, like, brandy-soaked cigars for $1.50. It was crazy.
Oh, damn. Fedor's favorite.
Yeah, legit. Paraguay is a place. It's good.
Damn, interesting. I have this perception as well, like how many like people out there who just have this idea of the American dream and like, yo, how good America is, or like China, or I don't know, UK, Britain.
It only works if you're an American, because like I can go anywhere and be like this. You know what I mean? If I was in Russia right now, I'm pretty sure they would say the same thing. Like they'd be like, whoa, dude, that guy's new pagodi, but like it'd still be doing it. Like, but in America, it's like. The laws are here now because Americans have tried everything. We've sued each other. We've fallen off each other's trampolines. We've burned our lips on coffee. there's a dark side to the American dream.
Yeah, but the point is like
nightmare,
nobody is talking shit about Paraguay, you know, and like
No,
nobody's talking.
it's a secret. Yeah, and honestly, I wish I hadn't said anything because this is the problem. Now people want. No, I mean it's gonna. Well, no, MTV is gonna be like, let's go have our like activist like festival in Paraguay. Like I met like David Guetta in Paraguay. Like it's the coolest country. Like nobody cares. Nobody wants to know. That's fine, and like that's the problem. Like everyone who hears about something great, they go to like, so in California we have the beaches where we surf. We say surfing sucks, don't try it. Like we have bumper sticker. Any surfer has a sticker that says that. Like, we don't want it to be overblown. Like, honestly,
New York is the same way. If you're gonna go to South
America, don't even, unless you're like a really crazy person that you think wants me to hang out with you, don't go to Paraguay. Go to like, go boring. Go do something like simple. Go to Buenos Aires. It's not that boring. There's still tango. It's still fun. But like, don't do interesting things unless you're ready to like get kidnapped and raped and murdered in a van. Like, because that's the other thing. Like, if you're not ready, no, I'm serious. Like, that's the thing about Brazil, right? Like Brazil, like you can die. Like it's a dangerous place.
Really?
Like like it's not as dangerous as like California. It's like not as dangerous as being from like East LA. But like, yeah, like you can get, if you're alone on a bus and like, like bad things happen to place. And just now, Brazil's getting to a point, like the new president.
Bolsonaro, that dick. He's a dick. Is he a dick?
Well, here's my pro Duterte, pro Putin, pro.
Well, I'm pro Duterte.
Pro Trump.
I'm pro Duterte.
Here's my deal. Throwing people out of helicopters works and saves bullets. And so if you've got a guy who's kidnapping an old lady and he's got a gun to her head and someone can take a sniper shot at him, like, dude, I'm all for it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not just pro like choice. I'm like pro like take them out if they're making bad choices. Like I don't care. Like in Brazil, I've seen enough kidnappings, I've seen enough murders, I've seen death squads. And I've seen people that like put flamethrowers in El Salvador. They gas and burn orphans who live in the sewers because they live underground, and they call themselves the Tortuga Ninjas, the Ninja Turtles. You know what I mean? So at a certain point, these kids, it's funny, but it's sad at the same time. Like, no, but it's messed up. So like at a certain point, you have to be for taking out people like that because. Like, you don't need that. And Brazil's got enough people that are actually hurting people that it's like, dude, maybe, it's a different case. In the United States, I don't think we have a perfect solution yet. My perfect solution is this. Once you got neural lace, freeze people until then. But once you got neural lace, erase their brains. Put a new memory on a person. Once you can just set it that this guy is an agricultural expert who loves strawberries and toy trains, just put that same program on anybody who molests children or murders anybody. You know what I mean? Like anybody who's a lifer, you just make them into a socially useful person. That's the real punishment, I think. And like make them love Free Willy, whatever.
Wow, interesting.
So
that's a good use of technologies in the future, I guess. Like in
I
terms
think it's
of
inevitable.
Inevitable, yeah.
I gotta ask you, Andreas. What about languages? How do you feel? Do you think, first of all, that there's going to be one language in the future, or do you think that, like it's not really worth it to learn a language at this point?
Okay, so first off, like that's a real fascinating question. And Elon Musk said recently with the neural lace, imagine that you can send a sexual encounter that you had to one of your friends, which is his idea. And it was like, okay, that's interesting, but the difference is if I could send my words about a sexual encounter, they're going to be more interesting than the sexual encounter itself. I mean, no offense to me in my sexual encounters, but my words are like dictionary, based. They're eloquent. It's going to help. If I'm a 6-year-old and I experience that without the words, it doesn't matter. Or if I'm Mongolian or something, I don't have the same language. So language is huge. I don't mean to sound like one of those like Chomsky gnomes. But like at the same time, language is huge. Lacanian linguistics matter, And so if you have this idea that we can exist without language, it's not going to groove. So language will always be there. And then there's two ways to go with it. Do we make right now we have all these collections of ideas like, oh, that's really interesting because you have 52 words for snow, and this is a different kind of snow. And like, oh, you Greeks have 7 words for love. That's weird, and we can learn about different kinds of love. Machines can do that. They can create a language, and Google is learning how to communicate between us. So yes, I think very much inevitably Google will create a new language. What I would like to see is everyone speaking Sanskrit. I think if we all spoke Sanskrit, it's a very functional language I learned as a kid. The Slavic languages are very close. Greek and Croatian and Russian are based on it, so you can very quickly start to pick it up. And every word, you can create new words with new concepts. So even computers can understand Sanskrit. So my hypothesis would be if you were to create a new language, it would be in Sanskrit. But in the meantime, I think that, like the AI can learn different ways of interpreting and creating new constructs of intelligence. So language, yes. First off, we're going to have a new kind of language that AI has figured out how to communicate with us. It's going to separate us from the older generations. It'll make us quicker and more intelligent, but it'll be a way for us to dehumanize because we don't want our old civilization anymore. But also, I wonder, can we get past language, like you just said? Because I even wonder that, if we were to have a YouTube of experiences and you were to experience my experiences, if you took a 6-year-old girl's body and ran her through my experience as God, she would be traumatized, right? Because she wouldn't be able to handle it. And even physically, her body's not designed to handle those feelings. So you have to wonder, what happens when the certain kinds of people experience certain kinds of things, and do we want that? Because if we have everyone exactly the same, then we get to a point where it's well, even if I didn't program you all to vote the same way, I programmed you all to think the same way that you vote. So everyone has the same opinion because they have the same thoughts, and there's no reason for democracy anymore because anybody who votes nay is just defective by that logic. Because it's everyone knows what's right, so why are you thinking differently? So you want to have stacks of intelligence. You want to have people to be able to stack their different experiences still. But yeah, I don't know if you can exist without language. And I'd almost argue you can't, because think about what it would be like to not have a word for sounds. How would you differentiate sounds from lights if you didn't have a word for sounds or lights?
Yeah.
Different kinds of sounds. And
Andreas, what sound does the cat make? Andreas, what sound does the cat make?
Any sound it wants to.
You're supposed to do the sound.
Oh, like mushka or meow, depends. A lot of cats I know like to go most cats are just naked drug addicts that do catnip. They just wait at your house for you to come home from working naked, for you to bring them food. And then everyone thinks cats are so nice. They're just it killed a mouse. It just murdered a mouse. It's I killed something. I was stressed out. You deal with the body. I pissed in your shoes. Give me some more nip. Cats, just naked drug addicts at your house. There's a lot of competition.
but as for languages, man, I think there is just an idea. There is no diversity at this point in the future. And let's say I have this I've been fascinated by the fact that a guy from Mauritius, a tiny country near to Madagascar, could speak English and French, and the whole North Africa almost. Wait,
what about French. Chinese, bro? Does he speak Chinese?
No. He speaks English, French, and Creole.
But what about his parents?
It's another person, man. I'm talking about another guy. Yeah, and the fact that I was oh shit. So we had those French people, in that company, and I was yo guys, talk in French for a couple of minutes. I just want to hear it. And the girl was just yeah, he makes some mistakes, in French. It's just funny to hear. But the fact, but just idea that I'm French and Mauritius, goddamn. It's a fucking era.
Well, they think Mauritania or Mauritius is where the one of the Atlantis satellite rings. There's a giant ring there, so they think that they're Atlantis. And in Star Trek, they have the Ferengi, and the Ferengi come from the Arabic word for Frank or foreigner is Ferengi. So the Franks were in Ethiopia. They were in Mauritania, which is both sides of Africa in the north. And the French were a lot of places. The thing that's weird about French is it's basically backwards to Etruscan, and it's bad Latin. right? Because good Latin is based on all sorts of mistaken rules about Etruscan, but it's mirrored backwards. So we learn a lot from bad French and from Creolic, and also looking at the Iraqi or the Akari. I forget. There's a kind of the Aboriginal Africans that have the story of the spider and Brer Rabbit. It's like the Iraqi or
Ashanti.
Ashanti, I think that's it. So they have a tribe, and they have a culture that's language is really similar to some of the structural rules to the French, which makes sense. It's like, well, there's a hyphen, an apostrophe here, so this is to carry over to the next word. It's like nobody else would do that unless they were trying hard to please their aristocratic African rulers, right? And so this is another, you can look at, like, in California, the mansions look like Mexican adobe houses, both because they're built by actual Mexicans instead of white people. They bring in, or actually, Indians, they bring them in to build because it's cheaper, and then they build a certain aesthetic. So you look at the Greek houses, and they're built on African design because the Greeks conquered the Barbary coast, and people had, pretty impressive stuff in Africa, in Mauritania and in Algeria, which was Carthage, and in, Morocco. They had 1,000 years ago, water systems that the entire town was in a desert because water was coming up from a wheel that spun it and pushed it across this like Pac-Man grid. And so everyone's house had like flowers and trees growing, and it just tripped people. And there were lights too, lights at night. And they're just like, dude, this is nuts. So we want to have a city that looks like Northwest Africa, And so the Occident in France, they took over that idea. And even Holland, the Netherlanders, their style is very much based on Moorish style. The turban, the word for tulip in Dutch, tulip comes from turban because the Arabs brought it. So it's like it's constantly, and the Arabs were African Moors. So
as you can see, Andreas, like all of those unparalleled links to like comes from Arab, French, broken like grammar. But what if AI will create this new language, right?
Oh, I'm so sure they will. And that's a big thing. It's a big thing what humans have made possible. So looking at the languages, you can see some of the ways we do things. Looking at machines, we can see some of the ways they're different. The Sans people click when they talk. Like, it's like, I just watched The Gods Must Be Crazy. And the Sans people have a language that's designed to be heard from hundreds of meters away and not to offend the animals because they're just clicking at each other to be heard. So then you've got people that whistle, but then you've got, specific grammar. And so with Latin and Spanish, it's like it has to be, in Russian even, it has to be spoken correctly, or else it's like not, but in English, you can just speak it wrong. So that's a big thing about Swahili and English. And I think that's why English is kind of the Swahili of Europe, that the new language will probably not have the sequence and order as the order of operations be as essential in the language, and that concepts can be probably more relative, and that the ending words won't matter as much. It's a big reason why they're teaching people not to care about gender, because if in Spanish it's complicated, like to say everything is for he or for she, it changes a sentence completely. So if you just drop it, it makes life a lot easier, and that's a bigger deal in a lot of other countries than it is in America.
Yeah, but I'm more worried about like the diversity of that. When I cannot hear like, let's say the native language of Lebanon, right? I mean, they speak Arabic, French, but I wanna hear more like Lebanese, and because they have like this particular geographic position, they would create some words that is like more relevant, like as you said, 50 shades or 50 words for snow. Just different type. So I'm worried about that. When French came and colonized all of these countries, they brought French for an education system. And what that did to all of those countries, it just destroyed this variety of languages. They all became French, So I'm worried about that one.
But it also, look, did it really? Because look at Africa, and everywhere that speaks French kept their language. Can you say that about any English speaking? Most of the time, the English destroys it more. French people are like, we don't really care if you want to speak your own language. Sometimes if you want to call a thing you invented by its own name, we'll start doing it too. But that's why Americans will use a French word for a French thing, because they're like, it is what it is.
We would do the same, you know.
Yeah, like what are you gonna how are you gonna crochet without acting French about it? So like Africans have their own words for things, and they're integrated into a French tongue, so they're able to be like, okay, I'm from like 100 miles away. I speak like Tutsi, and you're speaking some sort of a Sans dialect, man. Like I don't even know what you're saying. Like parlez-vous français? And then they're just like, oh, ouais, and then they're able to like share this like. I know my French is funny. It sounds like a trucker from California. I'm like, ouais, bro, yeah, come on, mon confident. Oh, yeah, I get it. But still, like you can. I mean, that's the other reason I like French from people that aren't. I love French people because I've been to like Nantes and they speak very special. But you go to Canada and you speak wrong French, they don't mind. And you go to Africa and you speak a little French. I mean, like you'd be surprised how many times I've spoken a Creolic. And it gets by. There's a lot of weird places. And, these other things, when the French went, they made friends. They brought hookers to Canada. They brought all these Moulin Rouge stars and gave them to the Indians as a present. So there's a lot of really pretty French Canadian girls, that are like half Indian.
Like Jen Reddy.
It's a real thing, man. And like in exchange, they got furs. Can you imagine trading beaver for beaver in the 1800s? Like the commodity market was different. But they ended up at a point where Canada was legitimately able to peaceably integrate French into the native tribes. And then the English started, there's a 7-year war. And then the English forced the Treaty of Paris of 1761, or 63, sorry. And it starts to change the way that the colonies, Louisiana's given, Florida's given to England. Spain's given most of New France, and then everything starts to disintegrate into the United States. But up until that point, like there was a whole different kind of United States, and each one of them was different. And you have to also know that in the 1800s there was like steampunk. So Louisiana they had black governors, they had electric trolleys and cable cars, and they had Morse code and everything else. So it's not like it was just like so long ago, really. It was like a really Louisiana was a very sophisticated place.
Yeah, and we're gonna go there one day, me and Fedor,
Yeah, that's right.
But have you ever been to Jamaica, Andreas?
So weird that I haven't been to Jamaica, man. I mean, I've had Jamaican expats around me all my life. They've been sent to California and apparently New Jersey. We call you an expat.
Yeah, not an expat at all, but. Yeah, I'm going.
You're born and bred.
I'm going on Tuesday, and I don't even know what to look for. I've been having this issue with my parents of like they never taught me how to speak with like a patois, and I
regret. You're busted.
Yeah, I feel just like right, I don't have the essence of it. And
dress like one of the Jamaican dudes who wear like a collared shirt and a V-neck sweater. And glasses. Just act like one of the super nerds.
Yeah,
who
like
wants
the
to be
nerds, right?
Yeah, because they have a lot of them. They have really British Jamaicans. Yeah. Like it's another side to it. It's actually the anti-British reaction isn't even a Jamaican idea. It's because there were sailors that were Scottish. Like Peter Tosh, right? Who taught Bob Marley how to play guitar. He's Macintosh, and so you have this very sailor Scotch swag. So I would also say watch Pirates of the Caribbean and just use a bunch of their terms. Or watch Red X, the documentary, because I watched that enough times I learned how to understand my friends. Because I had all these dudes that came from the 80s. There were people being killed in gangs in Jamaica and stuff, and they ended up in California for some reason. And so I knew a bunch of Jamaicans, and like, dude, they learned how to talk, to a point that they could be understood, but it was a long time coming. And so like I'd have to watch subtitles on Bob Marley or, have you seen The Harder They Come? Have you seen that movie yet?
No.
Watch some Jamaican movies from the 60s, Mon. That'll help.
All right.
Probably.
All right.
Yeah.
Check it out.
But what are you planning on seeing when you get there?
It's my grandmother's funeral. She just died.
Oh.
2 weeks ago.
That's a weird
skill. I plan on seeing a dead body, but other than that, though.
way to make it all Santeria and weird about it.
Yeah, well, nothing really bothers me except for a damsel in distress. But I'm just gonna
say oppression. We're running some classes in oppression and damsel in distress.
But no, I'm gonna try to explore. You know, it's been a weird situation for me because I've been trying to ask all my family members, like, yeah, how can I just be more Jamaican? I just want to blend in, you know, because I've been doing that in other countries I go to. I learn the language before I go, I do some research. But for my own country, you know, the country that my parents come from, I can't do it. Like, all my family's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. No, just speak like you are, you know. Oh, Jamaica's too dangerous. Don't do anything. And I was like, what? What kind of bullshit is that? No, yeah, Jamaica's not more dangerous than all these other countries I've been to.
But dress funny. I mean, always wear a wife beater or a tank top is the way tankies wear it. And then have a rip in your shirt and always carry a liter bottle of beer, even if it's empty. Just carry it with you to the next liquor store so you can get it changed. Because you can always beat someone over the head with, I'm serious, like, you will never. And also, dude, like, this is legal knuckle ring, you know, like, just, like, really, you want to take someone out, like, wear enough jewelry to really punch someone in the face. But in general, you're probably safe because if you're going with family into a funeral, I hope no one causes a fight with you there. Just like, careful. Look into it before you pick up chicks at a funeral because they're usually related. So always be careful with that. But otherwise, you're probably set. Sounds like it's a good situation.
Yeah, we'll see. New territory, you know. I haven't been there since I was a kid, so.
Write a song, man. Write a poem. Write a poem.
I might write a reggae song, you know.
That's what to do, but I got reggae songs I used to do it. Brother Snowman. That's not very reggae.
So another thing I wanted to ask you, just an update, you know, because like, yeah, the last time we talked, you were telling me you were like teaching kids at a school. Were you teaching science or not?
I've been doing pre-algebra mostly. I mean, okay. I did a couple little oobleck things, but the summer came, and then also COVID was causing everything to shut down. So I've been doing private, like the Brittney's kids. I teach the kid, he's 6 years old. I've been teaching pre-algebra. So it's pretty rad because he's autistic slightly, and so he's genius. Like his capacity to do long division at 6 years old is better than I was at 9th grade, and I was pretty decent, I thought. So it's pretty awesome watching this kid learn how to do and see things differently, and he does fractions, and he can do, you know, do negative, subtraction, double negatives. He's like really, you know, on top of it. So it's been kind of interesting to me to watch how people learn. But it's summertime now, so we've kind of stepped into the like, you know, I was a lifeguard in California, so I've been trying to teach them how to swim more. And I was like, dude. Today it was funny in the lake. I was like, monkey, airplane, soldier. Monkey, airplane, soldier. I was like, I got this, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty weird hanging out with 6-year-olds, man, because like they're super emotional. Like 6-year-olds are basically people. It's like you're trip sitting for someone on like 10 doses every day. They're just like, I want to play my game. It's like, it's gonna be all right. It's like, I want my. I'm like, chill out. And then other times it's like, do you remember that time I farted? You're like, dude, you need to relax. You know, like 4 to 6, like it's a lot to handle.
Yo, that's interesting, man. That's like my observation, a new one. So Andreas, you've been doing all of this like different kinds of jobs, you know, and from lifeguard to just like a teacher, you know. And we talked with Tarik about this yesterday. I was just asking like, what was the most fascinating, like, favorite work of yours that you've done in your life? And he was like, I cannot recall it. I don't know, you know, and I don't know that I can even do something for a long period of time, you know, like be like a writer for 25 years or some shit. So yeah, what is the essence? Is this perception of work being done in like in your whole lifetime gonna stay present, or we would change to this like mode, like, I'm a teacher this year, and tomorrow or like next couple of years I'm gonna be doing like research on Tartaria, you know, in academia.
Fundamentally, what I do and I like to do is like I like to learn and I like to make videos about what I learned that are funny, and like I want people to see them. And I learn from making a lesson, so that's also, it helps reintegrate it into really hold on to the information. And I do what I have to do so that I can do that. So like I've worked for nano engineering. I got a degree in engineering for doing graphene. I worked in South America for water purification. worked on the YouTube, stuff. I've worked for TV stations. I worked for CNN. I was the social media strategist, so I ran their social media. When I was 13, I used to digitize and clean scratches off of records because no one could do it at that time at where I was except for me. So I've done a lot of these things, but really at the end of the day, what I want to do is I have a projector. I make movies. If I had more money, I'd make movies for a while, and I probably wouldn't do it forever because it's exhausting. But if I had like $300,000, I'd make a movie right now. If I had $20,000, I'd make a movie right now. It's like I'm constantly not able to do stuff like that. So what I like to do is go travel, film stuff, and I'll do that for the rest of my life. And other things I'll do for the rest of my life is make YouTube videos and make art and make music and have fun making, fixing computers, making Raspberry Pis that are overclocked and that do emulate Dreamcast games. And I'm helping the ZEMU group try to hack the Xbox so you can emulate Xbox games by original. Like I just have weird passions that I like to work on GitLab projects and do Linux stuff. So it's like the thing that I would do for a while and then I would quit again. Those are the things that I don't like. It's like, who wants to really save people's life all the time? My mom was a OBGYN doctor, so she was always rushing off to save people's lives. So I learned really early on, I don't want, don't hurt yourself working. You know what I mean? Don't. And a lot of people hate that. I heard these people, Germans, they get up at 4:00 in the morning. And it's like, you lazy ingrate, you disrespect work that you would say that. I'm like, no. Don't get me wrong. Work. You got out of the Garden of Eden and God's like, you're broken. Here's some medicine. Work. You can make it like the garden. You can fix it. Work is good. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. But don't work so hard that you hurt yourself on purpose. Because you don't need to. And I've seen it so much where people get off on working. It's like a drug. And it's like, dude, it's not healthy and it makes you angry and it ages you. And it's like, try to find bliss. And bliss is try to find it without doing heroin and try to find it in a way that doesn't hurt people and try to find it in a way that makes it more sustainable for other people. And you'll be exhausted by the end of the day trying to do that. And you'll also have had a good time. And so it's like
our work trying to get you on this podcast, how many
I can't believe you put out a lot of positive energy. That's all I gotta say. That you were able to make this work. It's like fireworks going off right now. Okay, I'm at a lake. Thank you for making me do this though, because it was awesome. I love that we did this. This is awesome, man.
Yeah,
thanks. Thank you.
No, good. I don't want to end this conversation because
who said it's over? Who said it's over? Nobody said it's over.
I mean, question me a bit, but the problem is I didn't bring my power cable, so that's the thing is it's gonna die, and it's about 10% left on my battery. But we should also do these. We should also do these again. This is not my greatest coherency level because I had to work on a lot of stuff today. I'd say.
No, it was fun,
so we're about 2 hours away from normal Andreas. Where he crashes.
No, I can button my shirt. I can shave. There's a whole different Andreas. A Mormon Andreas. You haven't even seen it.
Crazy, but I'm glad that you brought this Raspberry Pi. I just want to touch on this a little bit. It's microprocessors and stuff, and the way that technology brings this possibility to create some crazy stuff like robotics greenhouse. Before we need to have this fucking 10 engineers and make it analog, and now I can do this myself, just watch some YouTube videos and do it. So I guess all of these new technologies, they not just replace all the occupations, all kind of, styles of working, but they bring some new stuff as well. So what I want to say is that there's, because my mom, she's like, oh, Fedor, you got to graduate from this school. You're going to find a good job. You're going to work there as a coder. And I was like, yo, mom, it doesn't work like that anymore. You got lagged out in that time,
It depends, man. To be honest, if I wanted a real job, I could have one. If you know how to use Linux, you can still get a job. And when it comes down to, especially, it's it could be better. It's true. Because at the end of the day, once all software is free, then it goes back to being cable repairman, TV repairman, radio repairman. Back in the old days, you could bring any TV to any repairman, and any repairman had all of the different tubes and all of the different equipment, and he could fix any TV. So you're going to have a refrigerator Sears Roebuck installer guy who shows up at your house and he installs Linux on your refrigerator and on your car and on whatever. And it's like he can be trained in certain ways that you don't have to be, because it takes a long time to get something perfect. But like once I've got it working, it's perfect. Like the Raspberry Pi right now is better at playing any game than any of the 20 or 30 systems that were made that it's copying. I've got Neo Geo, N64, whatever. Macintosh, 1997, Prince of Persia. Like all of that stuff plays better because I made a machine that copies it. Only it has more of every feature and everything. It's all so it's like so one step. But that took me like weeks, man. Like I got this game Tumba, like some Japanese company went bankrupt in like 1999 or 2000. That game is $360 to buy right now used. So I had to like find a file that was in Japanese, and I had to Google translate the text file. And I had to
bro, you could have asked me.
MDF.
Man.
Now it works is the point. And
no,
so
I meant for the Japanese. You know, I could have translated for you.
Oh yeah, that's legit. That's actually probably a good idea. I'll send you the text file and you can go over it. That's smart, because I didn't have to even look at it until I was playing it. I'm like, okay, this is English, I think it's called, right? Like where it's all your base or belong to us. But people still do that. I translate files all the time because there's all these Japanese games that didn't get released in the U.S.
Yeah.
There's all these homebrew games too, and it's like once the 3D games came out, 2D games stopped, and there were still really cool 2D games. So like now that all this other stuff can be opened back up. I just got this thing. I'll have to show you sometime. It's a chip that plugs into the it's a cartridge into the Sega Genesis that connects it to a MIDI controller for a keyboard and for MIDI. So I can make music, and all the music's coming out of a Sega. And it just sounds like, it's like really sweet. But yeah, technology's changed a lot, but it's also the same stuff it was in the 80s, right? Like a Raspberry Pi is about 1.5 without a fan, 2.4 gigahertz, which is significant once it's sped up. Quad core computer, but like compare that to a room in the 60s. Like the Cray was just as powerful as that, right? And the Cray was $50,000-$60,000. So it's like the technology was but it was $56,000. But then the people who used it were at Carnegie Mellon and they were students, so they didn't. It's like it didn't mean anything to them. So it's like it's weird when you start looking at the kind of culture that created the world that we're living in today, because it had massive abundance. And the future, like if you can have any color Lamborghini and it doesn't cost you anything because there's no scarcity, like this is this weird future that we're heading into, is like the non-scarcity based virtual economy of the future, where like you can everyone can have what they want. And I mean, think of all the problems that go away. Like you can stop worrying about if you're not pretty, if you're not handsome, if you're not a woman or a man, like even like or whatever suit. Is it Prada or Gucci? Like, whatever, how little or big your problem is, all of it's material for the most part. So,
that's right.
First thing is you can deal with the material in a virtual reality. Second thing is you can realize it's just a virtual reality. And then, like, so hopefully, eventually, the meta of having a Razr phone over and over again will be people don't care about their grandfather's violin, they care about the music. And so the phone switches, but they just care about the song. You know, they have their play, and then people will have hyper materialism will lead to a lack of interest in materialism. Yeah. And I think we'll probably transcend it because of it.
But I don't think that we can bring this concept of materialism to Mars, you know? I mean, we want to colonize Mars. How can we bring all of those attributes, you know, like fucking fancy bags and all of those oligarchs with us? You know, it just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? So, like, I know what we have.
There's two kinds of Mars, right? Like, so one that's interesting is, like, I love how crazy the internet is. There are people that totally believe that we don't live on a globe and that there's no outer realm. But at the same time, there are luminaries, and so you could live in a sort of dimension. So on that level, who knows what Mars is really like? And this idea that they're creating a red Earth that people can live in, you're never going to be able to go back from it. Seems like you're just selling your soul to the Tartaris. So I don't know about the whole Mars colonization thing. Having said that, if you could take a submarine and you can Stargate it to anywhere, then it could easily be coming out into this other place. So I see it more like, well, Mars is made of iron. It'll be really quick if it's anything like that they're describing it. to 3D print materials and then start to build prefab things. And the real thing that can't transport itself to Mars is waste, is entropy, is, even extreme growth, because extreme growth can be sustained only so much. So what we do is you have a certain amount of growth and then it's cut off. And so everyone, all of a sudden, all the steel mill starts going, the free energy starts flowing. And then you have, have you seen Dune? They're making a new Dune. You should read the book Dune and see the movie Dune. They're making a new one. It's about a world where they have sandworms that make drugs that heal you and open space-time holes. Dune's amazing. Star Wars is based on Dune. But the Bene Gesserits are trying to hide all this. Anyway, they have, wherever they go, they shoot a needle out of a gun, like a cannon gun, and the needle has a cable, and then they connect the cable at either end, and then goes these monorails. So all you need is one of those cannon guns, and you shoot the rail to the other end like 10 miles, and then attach it, and then you've got, anywhere in a sandstorm, you've got this monorail train. So the amount of waste that we can avoid is impressive. And the amount of waste.
But this is like more technological thing, man. I'm talking about the remnants of old prestige, just like aristocracy shit, where you have these people like, who is in charge, or who like, this fuckers with money, and they're like basically wasting it, like while other people are like working hard to push that needle. So my point is like, when we are actually going to, like, I don't know if you're gonna do this or not, but we cannot bring that old style, like materialism to the Mars, to the planet.
Right. Yeah. There's going to be like each according to their own.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
There could be a point where, like, this is the other option: is we wait 100 years. So you nuke. Elon Musk talked about you nuke the sky, and then after 100 years, you've got this greenhouse affected rainforest, and you seed it with all the different animals, and so they run rampant, and then eventually we just tax it like Africa. Like, we just take Mars on and then genocide and endanger and extinctionize all of the species like we did here. That's a very human thing to do. And then we can go back. But I would like to see it differently. What I'd like to see is humans start to figure out how to get what they need virtually for the most part, because you don't need, if you could hunt an elephant in a cyber experience and it was just as good or better, then you don't need to kill an elephant. I think that would be awesome. I don't want people like just killing all the elephants all the time.
Yeah, and war should also be like a virtual thing too.
Yeah, war is a virtual thing. That's sports. If you go back to football, soccer in Argentina and in Mexico, they used to kick a skull around, and the winner got killed. They played lacrosse and soccer in front of the pyramids for thousands of years. So it's like, sports, you got teams switching back and forth. Gamification of war is essential, because otherwise you also lose people that can. If you lose your soldiers completely, like, you want people that are like, I was in Nam and he's teaching, or the Gulf, whatever, he's teaching these kids, because then the next time a war comes around, 9 times out of 10, the best ones at war are the people that were trained by people who'd been to war. So you've got to keep keep it alive in the gamification, but and patriotism, right? Because you'll be willing to love your team so much that you'll hate your neighbor, and that's huge. Otherwise, you wouldn't go along with war for the most part, because it's just,
Yeah, interesting. All right. 10% left. I would go on this first. Like, goddamn, I have some ideas in my head, but I know it's like what, 5%, 6% now.
Yeah,
so
hold on. Last question, Andreas.
7.
Andreas, do you know that flag behind him?
The Japanese flag.
No.
What happened to it? Lost its race.
It's not Japanese.
Yeah.
The Chinese flag with the red sun.
Yeah.
No, it's Qin Dynasty. Yeah, the last empire.
It's the Qing Dynasty flag. Got it. Yeah, I didn't know that. No, that's pretty rad. The dragon, because their royal family they say came from a dragon.
Yeah, that's a representation of Li Xiaolong.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm gonna look it. I'm looking this up now. So the Song Dynasty is the same as the Qing Dynasty, or different?
No, it's different. The Qin Dynasty, the last dynasty, the last.
Qing with a Q.
Yeah.
Figured as much.
Whoa. Serious sassy tonight. Yeah, the Q, man. The Q keeps coming up, man. Like, the Q dynasty. Like, Q it up, and then, QAnon and everything. I wonder what's up with the... So, what do you think? Is the Q dynasty, are you trying to bring it back? Or why? Is that like a thing?
No, I was just curious if you knew that flag, because you know a lot of world history. So I was just wondering.
I wish I could have pulled it. I mean, I couldn't see perfectly behind his head, but even still, I wouldn't have recognized it right away. But it's interesting that it's it looks like kind of the snake "Don't tread on me" American flag. It looks like the original American flag. In a lot of ways, probably the same.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe there's some connection, But all right.
Yeah. I'm trying to send you down a rabbit hole, Andreas. But
they have totem poles in the West Coast. The Haida and the Hazda have totem poles that are set up because the Chinese would bring them overseas. And so if you look in China, you see totem poles, right? And so the Vikings, the Chinese. That's another reason the Tartarians are so closely connected, because parts of China were Uyghur, and the Uyghur are, they're like Turkish. They're like essentially the Tartar. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the other thing about the Manchurians. This thing, Qing dynasty was Manchurian, and the Manchurians died out essentially, because there's very few left because there was a war, and the Spanish flu wiped out 100 million of them. But yeah, it's pretty brutal.
All right.
The kids are gonna.
So we completely messed this up. But if I edit it, maybe I don't know. We were supposed
you
to
probably pull something together.
We were supposed to do an intro and at least introduce who you are.
Recent Tartaria.
Oh, we could do this right now. Hey, what's up? I'm Andreas. Thanks for having me on your show. You better check out tartarinova.com if you're cool enough, and make sure you check out the youtube.com/xirtus. Exertus. It's the way to be. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having.
And subscribe and donate, and then there's also the advanced philosophy memes. Go to the APM advanced philosophy memes, because that's getting dank. If you want a meme stack, hit up our Patreon, do a donation. I'll send you a stack of memes like you've never seen, and then get a T-shirt. We got the Tartary Bros T-shirts. You know how it is. So yeah.
All right.
Exertus.
Thanks for showing up. And we'll see you again for sure.
Let's do it real soon. Thank you for making it work. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Peace.
Talk to you, man. Peace.